between yourself, SpaceX and Rocket Lab, there seems almost to be a bit of a race to get more and more of these small satellites into orbit. Can you just explain the urgency? Why now?
Well, honestly, I don't think there is a race. What's happening, though, is spurred by innovation. The cost of satellites has come down enormously, and that's allowed companies to pop up all over the world with new applications. For instance, we ship perishable items across the world. With the Internet of Things, we'll be able to monitor the temperatures and make sure they're not spoiled. Navigation, all of us use navigation satellites every single day almost. Banks connect via satellites so they can have their timing in place. Agriculture, industry, climate change, all of these things can make use of smaller, less expensive satellites. And so what's happening is companies, countries in civil space, national security, you name it, are making use of new satellite technology, which is going to improve the way we live here on Earth.
And can you just explain to me the cost of putting these modern satellites into space, say, compared with the past?
Well, I mean, if you looked at, say, 15, 20 years ago, putting a satellite in orbit, first of all, the size of the satellite was probably the size of a small school bus, and it required a very big rocket to put it up there. So you were talking about initial capability with a satellite being $400 million, $500 million. Now you can have a satellite constellation of small satellites for an order of magnitude less or more than that amount. And that's allowing industries that never thought they would use satellites. I mean, measuring fertilizer coverage on farms, measuring pollution output of industries. That would have been a ridiculous thing to think about, the use of space assets. But now, since the cost is so much lower, the capability is there and the ideas are popping.
And what about the payload that you can put into space? Because clearly one of the issues is going to be about how many satellites you can put onto your rocket, onto that 747 in terms of weight, to launch it at 35,000 feet.
Well, I mean, rockets love energy, velocity, and altitude. And we can provide that first leg of flight to space using a very reusable, very standard, very operational 747 airplane, an incredible workhorse. So we get to 35,000 feet and the better part of Mach 1 before the rocket has to do any work at all. So that's one benefit. Number two is we fly out of an airport. We can turn any airport into a spaceport. And like we did this week, we were up in Mojave. We took a flat piece of concrete at the end of the runway that was empty one day. The next day, it was a staging area for a 747 to fly a rocket that took satellites to space. So we lifted off, and an hour and a half later, 7 satellites were safely in orbit. And we can do that and replicate that anywhere in the world.
So exactly what are you putting into space? Where are they? Where are they going?
Yeah, well, we can put up, we're focused on putting small satellites into their precise orbit. And so we can put up currently about 300 kilograms into a sun-synchronous orbit. That's an orbit around the poles of the Earth, or about 500 kilograms more towards the equator. That's the range. And again, the focus really is to get the satellite to its place, to its orbit, as fast as possible, so that companies can make money and governments can do their missions.
This technology clearly has the potential to change not just logistics, as you've explained, but also communications networks. It makes inaccessible parts of the world capable of being open for communications and therefore business, high-speed broadband, all of these types of things.
Absolutely. So, I mean, there are companies, there are a number of mega constellations that are now being put up with that idea at their heart. In addition, there's some smaller constellations that are focused on specific regions and those areas, as you're pointing out, that currently don't have the coverage. So satellites are a great way to connect when you're either traveling or you're in a less densely populated area.
So when you started your career, you were working for Boeing. You're now using a Boeing 747 to put these payloads into space, effectively giving you a head start into that space race. I mean, this would have been beyond the realm of people's comprehension, imagination, even going back 30 or 40 years ago.
Well, you know, the idea of air launch has been with us for a while. I mean, if you think about the early days of high-speed airplane travel, the X-1, the X-15, the experimental platforms, they were air launched. They were dropped off of an airplane. So the idea of this has been around for a while. The idea of going to orbit has actually been around for quite a while. It took the vision, frankly, and the support of somebody like Sir Richard Branson to bring it from an idea and then a team like this that we have in this building to turn it into reality, execute it, and fly to orbit. And I'm frankly incredibly proud to be with them.
You've also made some small investments, and one of them's in a company in Australia called Sky and Space Global that's had some solvency issues, admittedly, along the way. Why are you making those types of investments?
Well, you know, we see, again, the space landscape changing dramatically. There's a transformation going on in space and architecture. So it's a great time to place your bets and get involved. And we want to be not only transportation for satellites, but we want to be an accelerator for this change and participate in it. And so Sky and Space Global was a great opportunity. We're enjoying working with them. We've recently did a similar activity with Arcit, who's bringing encryption, key encryption communication down from space. And there are a few other areas that we're looking at as well. So we want to be really involved in the space transformation, both from a satellite side, and we want to bring space launch to those ecosystems across the globe where satellites, launch, and space services can help humanity.
So just explain, is the real money here actually putting satellites into orbit, or the revenue that those satellites are capable of producing?
Well, I mean, all these satellites need a ride to orbit, first of all. And so, you know, we want to be that concierge service for these customers to get to their orbit and get there, and so that they can get their revenue, and then we get our revenue. The revenue from satellites obviously comes from communications and the imaging and in things like encryption and data storage and all of the services that come from space, navigation, timing, Internet of Things, etc. So there's a whole economic ecosystem that is already in place. We want to be part of the catalyst to make that more efficient, move forward faster, move technology into space, and for that, we get our revenue.
So will you try just to launch these vehicles, to put the satellites out there, or will you also try and join into the value, the money, that'll come from the data that they generate?
You know, okay, I misunderstood. Yes, absolutely. The answer is emphatically yes. Yeah, launch is a part of the value chain. The largest part of the value chain involves those satellites interacting with customers, consumers, government, industry, and so it certainly makes sense for us in these bets that we're making in the industry to participate on that end as well.
So this first mission you're putting out there has been called Tubular Bells Part 1. Why did you call it that?
Well, you know, we decided earlier this year that we would start naming our missions after key records that came out from Virgin Records as they formed. And we have an energetic team that loves the arts, loves music, and so that connection is great for us. Tubular Bells was Richard Branson's Virgin Records' first record, and so it makes sense for it to have it be our first flight named after a record, and it's a great song.
Dan Hart, many thanks for your time. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. Have a great day.